Hi, Mom. Sorry I'm late. I had to pick up Alex from detention.
Oh! Ooh!
Yeah, whatever. Well, she decided to break a boy's nose during lunch period today.
Girl boss moment!
I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, honey, but that is in fact a girl boss moment.
Just because he called her friend fat?
Good for her!
Good for her.
See, I'd call that a power move.
Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss.
Thanks, Grandma.
Did he bleed any?
I mean, a little.
Yes. Girl boss.
Hello, welcome back to Spells with Things You Probably Already Have. Not magic! Not magic. Not magic. I'm gonna show you two main ways to do this. The every knot is a spell type of way and the witch's ladder. The basics of this magic is to tie your intention into a knot. So grab some string or rope. Mine is a little bit fancy. It doesn't have to be a little bit fancy. In fact, natural string is better, but I picked this up for 49p. You can also use ribbon, or I actually use my own hair. Every single morning I usually tie my hair in a plait. I quite like to say my daily affirmations whilst I'm plaiting my hair, just in my head or out loud in the mirror whilst I'm plaiting my hair, and then they kind of get firmly locked in place throughout the day. However, sometimes, especially during filming, my Leo rising just needs her mane. Can I use? Yes, probably. As long as it is long and stringy and not spaghetti, you can do knot magic. The Witch's Ladder is a specific knot magic spell that I'm going to teach you now. Grab your string. Drop the string in gunky old cauldron of water. Oh, you don't want to see in there. Basic principle of a witch's ladder is a piece of string with 9 knots, and each knot represents a part of the spell. In between each knot is where you place your intention, and that's what makes the spell work. Here's an example of the words that you can use for each knot. However, like everything in witchcraft, it's open to adaptation if that feels right for you. You can also add charms like this into each knot if you like. If you have things lying around, they don't have to be fancy. Again, it can be a piece of twig or a rock or anything that you can find that can, represents your intention. Again, this is no one set way of doing knot magic. This is just one way with 9 knots, but you can use 3 knots, 6 knots. If you like, you could even use numerology to see what's best suited for you and your spell. But it's really simple. Grab your string, tie your first knot, say the first part of the spell. By knot of 1, the spell's begun. Then meditate and focus on your intention in between the next knot. For example, if this was a green piece of string, I may be doing a money or abundance or wealth spell, so I may say, I am abundance, I am prosperity, meditate on that, and then a few bits further down, you'd tie your second knot, and then you'd say, by knot of 2, the magic comes true, and so on and so forth until you finish your witch's ladder. And again, you can put in different charms, pieces of paper with sigils on them, make them look really cute, and then you can hang these anywhere that you like, or leave them across your windowsill, and when you're done or you want the spell to be broken, you can safely burn it or just undo the knots. And that's it.
Howdy folks, my new foot tambourine finally came in the mail, and it's pink, so I wanted to show y'all one of my songs that uses the foot tambourine. Here's my tune, I don't remember asking you what your God thinks of me. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I don't remember asking you what your God thinks of me. I ain't gonna base my life off of your spirituality. If what you do really works for you, I ain't gonna disagree. But I don't remember asking you what your God thinks of me. I don't practice religion, I ain't since I was young. But I don't walk around thinking I know what's best for everyone. If I ain't free from your religion, I ain't really free. Cause I don't remember asking you what your God thinks of me. I don't remember asking you what your God thinks of me. The way you pray is A-okay, just do it privately. Now I ain't saying that you ain't got the right to your beliefs, but I don't remember asking you what your God thinks of me. You say Jesus loves me, but I know what that means. It means you think the way that I am is sinful or obscene. If old JC were here with me, well, I think we'd agree. I don't remember asking God thinks of me. I don't remember asking you what your God thinks of me. Thank you.
I don't know who needs to hear this one, but this one is definitely for somebody. If it takes an entire pack of people to take on a little old you, then you must not be as small as they want you to think you are. Because if they have to travel in packs, that means they're not strong enough to face you on their own.
Lol. I asked my friends to send me a video of them nodding while holding a random object. They had no idea what for.
Anything is a dildo when you really put your mind to it. There's no such thing as too large or too sharp. Every time you stop to question yourself, I want you to tell yourself, I can and I will.
Europeans love to hate Americans for generalizing all of Europe when they literally do the exact same thing to the US. Geographically speaking, the US and all of Europe are practically the same size. The US has about 350 million people and all of Europe has about 700 million people. So yes, there is a difference, but both have huge populations. So please let me know why I would literally get lynched if I generalized Belgium and the Netherlands together, even though combined they aren't even a fifth of the size of my state and have about half the population of my state. So why would it not be okay for Americans to not know the difference between European countries when you guys generalize California to being the same as New York to being the same as Texas, even though geographically speaking, they are completely different, population-wise, they are completely different, and they each have their own completely different history. Yes, there are a guideline of rules that states have to follow. However, each state's laws are vastly different. It's literally like how the EU is. Little history lesson, when the US was founded, the title of state was completely different than what it's used as now. The title state had almost the same meaning as country. Each state has their own governing body and own laws. You guys are so caught up in your European superiority that you guys can't even see your own hypocrisy. You guys generalizing New Mexico to being the same as Maine is just as wrong as me generalizing the Czech Republic to being the same as Austria. The people are completely different.
I wish to talk about split attraction because I know when I learned about this, it helped me figure my shit out. Maybe it'll help you figure your shit out. Also, I am no longer high, so hopefully this will be coherent. Now you might be like, Tot, you just opened a can of alphabet soup and just poured it all over the goddamn table. What the fuck are you talking about? I will explain. For starters, split attraction is the phenomenon to where your sexual attraction and your romantic attraction does not line up. Now some of you might be scratching your heads. Don't worry, I will explain further. I'm an example of this. I am panromantic, but I am asexual. In layman's terms, it's pretty much like gender doesn't factor in who I can romantically fall in love with. However, I am not sexually attracted to anyone. For the inverse, we will look at my wife. She is an aromantic pansexual. She doesn't have any want or desire to be in a romantic entanglement with anybody. However, she does still feel sexual attraction, but gender doesn't really matter. This is normally found in people on the ace spectrum, but it can be found in other sexualities. There have been people out there who are only attracted to the opposite sex, but have fallen in love with the same sex, but aren't sexually attracted to them. Vice versa, there have been people who are only sexually attracted to the same sex, but have fallen in love with the opposite sex. Essentially, human brains and emotions are so much more fucking complicated than people try to paint them as. There's so many nuances and different experiences and different people in your lives that can affect you and how you perceive yourself and things in general. And mind you, you are an ever-growing and evolving being. So shit about you can change. Especially when you are in a more accepting environment and learn about new things. I thought I was straight, then I thought I was a trans man, then I thought I was a lesbian, then I thought I was bi, then I thought I was pansexual, and then I finally figured out I'm ace when I was in my fucking 20s. Now you might be like, if split attraction's a thing, why don't people talk about it a lot? Well, most people don't have it. I.e., most people's sexual and romantic attractions line up together. So to say I'm a lesbian, romantic, homosexual would be kind of redundant, so you just say I'm a lesbian. Or I'm a hetero-romantic, heterosexual. You can just say you're, straight. But split attraction is a thing, and it's not a bad thing either. So, if you do happen to have split attraction, it's normal. It's a lot more normal than I think a lot of people want to admit. It's totally cool to be romantically inclined towards one thing, but find that you're only sexually attracted to this or to none. Human beings are complicated, and sometimes we make up words in order to put ourselves in boxes so we feel better. But sometimes those boxes can be really fucking restrictive, and then it makes us question our existence as a whole. So if you're seeking answers, I hope this helped, or otherwise I hope you just vibe.
Want to come to the claw machine, you're going to want to move the joystick up 2 times, down 2 times, left, right, left, and then you want to hold the drop button for at least 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's at least 5 seconds, and then what you're going to do now is put your coins in like you're playing. So put your coins in, and then what you want to do is just go for anything you want. I want this little pineapple right here, so we're going to go for that. And then once you line it up, what you want to do now, this is the most important part. You want to hold this drop button the entire time. So ready? Just keep holding it, keep holding the drop button, keep holding it, and there we go, guys. I just got 2 of them.
It's a good question. So let's take this opportunity to talk about the virgin birth, because this might be one of the best examples of something that Christians have gotten wrong from the beginning. And I say that because it's really obvious if you actually read the text. So here it is in Matthew 1, quoted in every church Christmas play. Behold, the virgin shall be with child, and shall bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which translates to God with us. So 1, Matthew himself mistranslates this word. And the quote in Isaiah chapter 7 mistranslates the word from the Tock. Because this word actually translates to young woman, referring to age and sex, nothing to do with sexual purity. The exact same word is used in Proverbs chapter 30, that it translates to maid, in this instance, adulterous women. By contrast, in Isaiah 22, this word actually means virgin. It is a separate word. But there's perhaps a bigger problem, because this prophecy is for the prophet Isaiah's wife. If you go to the next chapter, she gives birth to that child. The author of Matthew himself takes the verse horribly out of context. So let's talk about that context. So the child actually has 2 names. She will call him Emmanuel, and the father will name him this: Mother Shalala Hash Browns. This is to convey 2 separate prophecies that the child will fulfill. This prophecy actually takes place during the Syro-Ephraimite War in the 730-735 BCE. You see that if you go to the previous chapter. Uzziah, the king of Judah, and Rezin, the king of Abram, wage war against Jerusalem. This prophecy is actually fulfilled in 2 Kings 15 and 16. Uzziah was struck and put to death, and King Rezin was put to death. Now, of course, it didn't actually fulfill prophecy. This prophecy was written after the historic event itself to make it seem like it was a fulfillment of prophecy. It's beside the point, though. Now, the next part of the prophecy is right over here. Before the boy knows how to cry out, my father, my mother, the wealth of Damascus and spoils of Samaria will be carried away before the king of Assyria. So Emmanuel means God's with them. Now, this word actually translates to something to the effect of hasten the loot or quicken the spoils, and it is alluding to this: the wealth of Damascus and spoils of Samaria will be carried away. Now, interestingly enough, in Luke's account, he does not quote the passage from Isaiah 7. He just says, there's a virgin, and her name is Mary. But the author of Matthew, for some reason, wanted to make it seem like it was fulfilling an Old Testament prophecy. Which is weird because, again, one more time, this prophesied child is born in the next chapter. Pretty interesting stuff, right?
This is a soy sauce cured egg yolk. No actual cooking required. Gently separate your egg yolks, place them in a container, and the curing solution I'm using is 2 parts soy sauce, 1 part rice vinegar, a little ground ginger, and Chinese 5-spice powder. Fill your container with this mixture, try to cover the eggs as best you can, then refrigerate for 2 to 3 days. They will shrink slightly, they'll be much easier to handle, fully cured, and completely safe to eat. They almost have a jelly-like consistency at this point, with each yolk being around 55 calories. This is technically very similar to pickling, although you normally bring your pickling solution to a boil before starting the process, but that's not necessary here. All you need is soy sauce and rice vinegar. Definitely a fun project, tag me if you try.
What color is this person's hair? I'll give you a second to put your answer in your head. Oh, you said that it was blue? Little do you know that the natural hair color of this person is actually brunette. You can dye that hair blue all you fucking want, but it will always be brunette, and I will always refer to it as such. It does not matter if it appears blue. I can tell that it was originally brunette. You can't fool me. I'm not going to refer to it as blue, inconvenience my life and the way that I live to make you comfortable with your blue hair. Microscopically, if we looked at that hair, you could tell that it was supposed to be brunette. And on top of that, had I known that you were actually a brunette prior to sleeping with you, I would not have consented to sex. It doesn't matter that I'm attracted to your blue hair. I thought it was supposed to be blue. I didn't know that it was really brunette. And because I would not have consented, had I been given all of this information like you should have the second we started speaking, you technically essayed me. You were withholding information that would have led to a different choice. Had I known your hair was brunette, I would not have slept with you. You're tricking people. I deserve to know what your natural hair color is. It doesn't matter if I'm attracted to the hair color you have on. That's how y'all sound.
Why do all of our favorite emo bands hate being called emo? Literally every single one of them. My Chemical Romance.
I could do a whole 10-minute video on this, but I think there's two main reasons these bands don't like to be called emo. First, when these bands were just getting together, emo meant something completely different. A lot of the members of the bands we'd consider to be the pinnacle of emo, like My Chemical Romance, The Used, Hawthorne Heights, they're in their late 30s, early to mid 40s now, and thus were teenagers in the 90s. If you were to ask JT, Gerard, or Bert about who they consider to be an emo band, they'd probably tell you like Rites of Spring, The Get Up Kids, or Sunny Day Real Estate. For them, emo meant something entirely different anyway. In addition to that, the term emo had some pretty negative connotations to it in the mid to late 2000s, so it's understandable the bands would want to distance themselves from the term. But what's funny is the term emo is now viewed very positively, and casts an absolutely enormous net in terms of who's a part of that genre. Oh, you play fast music with distorted guitars, usually in a major key? You have bands like mine, Craig James and the Hawthorns, whom you should absolutely check out, who don't consider ourselves emo but would welcome the term. And then you have bands like First and Forever, check them out too, whom embrace the term emo.
Perks of working at the cutest store ever. I get to pick what anime we play in the store. And the music. I'm surrounded by cute things all day. I get to have a stash of things I want to buy. Free shift drink from our boba place. My co-workers are amazing.
How to get any wish with just a mirror. First, get a mirror. Then write your wish on a piece of paper. Then tape the paper facing the mirror. Leave it there for 3 days and your wish will come true.
I don't know who needs to hear this today, but you're allowed to talk about what they did to you, and it doesn't matter how they feel about you talking about it, because if they wanted people to think they were nicer, they should have been nicer.
Did anyone else go through a phase in high school where they'd get blackout drunk at parties and run away? I mean literally run away and come to shoplifting from a CVS or retching in a cornfield with one shoe by the side of the highway. It's like damn, in retrospect it's obvious that kid was going through some shit. I wanna go back and pick my young drunk ass up in a Toyota Sienna stocked with Powerade and Advil and say something reassuring like this doesn't last forever, it gets better, trust me I would know, cause I'm you from the future and my younger self says wait hold up, so time travel is real and I say yes it's real, the government discovered it back in the 80s and then they hid it from the public. In fact that's what the Cold War was actually about, but never mind all that, the point is you're going through a tough time, but I promise everything will be alright, you're gonna be alright.
You want to hear a 3,000-year-old decision-making trick? Here's how to know that you have a good idea. This comes to us from the ancient Persians by way of Greek historian Herodotus. We all know that when we're drinking and we come up with an amazing idea, we just sit on it, right? You don't do anything about it, and you reconsider it when you're sober. That's obvious. What the ancient Persians did was the reverse as well. When you have an idea sober, reconsider it drunk. If it makes sense to you and stays exciting in both mental states, you got a winning decision on your hand.
Canon Jesus versus Fanon Jesus is one of those things that I just am boggled by. For example, here's Fanon Jesus. I am a sweet, pious man. I am the Son of God. You can use me as a self-insert character. Here's Canon Jesus. Oh, you're selling religious items? In my daddy's house? Oh, fuck your table! Get the fuck out of here! These are my friends. They're thieves, beggars, prostitutes, and other undesirables in society. They are all my homies. Respect them or I'll break your knees. Oh, you think that woman's too scantily clad? Oh, she's making you feel lustful feelings? Why don't you gouge out your eyes? Girl, I don't care if you're a prostitute. You washed my feet with your hair. We're friends now. I mean, I'm gonna die for your sins, but I'm also gonna scare the shit out of you by causing an earthquake. So, John, I'm gonna need you to take care of my mama. Some shit's about to go down, just take care of my mama.
This guy killed 3 people, and yet you'll watch it, young lady, and you'll go, I like this guy. Why do I like this guy?
Duet this video with your best methods to make creepy men cry.
Yes, yes, yes. This method is called Baby Runs for President. What you do is you use your best customer service voice to ask questions of the creep that only a toddler would feel comfortable asking. Like the time my friends and I went to a dive bar after work, and a guy who was definitely older than my dad came to sit at our high top with us. We were very uncomfortable. It was clear he was acting oblivious, but he knew. And for no reason, I whipped around and went, "Hey, how old are you?" He was like, what? And I said, well, I'm only asking because, well, you seem a little older than my dad, and I just got out of college, so I was wondering, do you have any grandkids? And I don't know if he cried, but he definitely left. Or the time my friend was getting manhandled at the bar by this bro-y bro. So I came out to him and I said, hey, what's your name? He was super drunk and spacey. He goes, Jesse? And I said, Jesse? Well, that's a girl's name, isn't it? Now I've thrown him off his rhythm. Because gender is a construct, but he didn't know that. And again, I can't remember if he cried or not, but he definitely fucking left. As long as you're in a public space, run for president, baby.
This is a metal spatula that has been sitting in some hot oil. Alright, so lift up out of the pancake batter and go right back into the hot oil.
Oh no, he's not.
Flip it, and you'll start getting these cool little bubbles.
Pancake pocket. Oh, that's a damn kangaroo pocket pancake. That's a pangaroo. Look at that. How long are we supposed to keep the spatula in the hot oil for? The specifics weren't too specific. We're gonna try it. We're gonna go for it. I don't remember. I should have paid better attention. I'll stick it back in. 1, 2. Oh, it's on the back side too! Look at that, it's perfect on that side. I'm about to pop, lock, and drop it on this pancake pocket. I'm not playing. Well, that thing's thicker than a Snicker. Look at that thing. Boy, look at the girth on it. Look at... Huh? Look at this. Look at this. We made a damn perfect pancake pocket. Made a pocket. That's like a little ice cream sleeping bag. A little bit of chocolate syrup for the blood pressure. Oh, I feel like Jack on the Titanic. Oh.
This is the audio where you show your pet. This is them dry and this is them wet. They aren't the most important organism on earth, but that doesn't define their worth. Oh, my pet, yeah, my pet. And you haven't seen the best bit yet. Oh, my pet, yeah.
So my go-to move in interviews when they tell me that dyed hair is against company policy is to say, is the company willing to buy me hair dye? Or pay for me to get my hair re-dyed a natural color? Because it's expensive and damaging, and I'm not doing that on my own dime for $12 an hour. And usually that leads to them going, okay, it's fine, just wear a hat at work or whatever. But this time, the interviewer got the store's general manager, who came out and sat down and goes, we are so desperate for staff that if you send me an Amazon link right now, I will buy you a wig and you can just wear a hat at work until it comes in. And I was like, okay, you understand the moves you gotta make in a labor shortage.
I almost had one of my best friends arrested because of the way that he told a story.
I'm going to tell you the story the way he should have told it, then I'm going to tell you the story the way he really did tell it. I was on my second date with Becca, and we were super into each other, and at the end of the date, she looked at me and she said, "Do you want to come to my place for some dessert?" And I said, "Yes." So we are in her kitchen, and we are sharing this fudgy brownie, and we made it through like 3 or 4 bites, and then we start making out like crazy. And things start to heat up a bit, and we end up on her couch, and we start taking our clothes off, but then she stops everything, and she's like, "No, I'm not really ready. It's only our second date. We should slow down." So I'm like, "That's fine. If we're going to do this, I want you to be 100% into it." So we put our clothes back on, we went back to the kitchen, and we start to eat the brownie again. But then she like jumps on me. We start making out way harder. We end up back on the couch, and you know, one thing leads to another, and we hooked up. It was great. We had a great time. That's what happened. This is how my friend Colin told me that exact same story. "Pete, I had sex with this girl the other night, like 5 minutes after she said she didn't want to." I'm calling the police.
I am amazed by how many people have come to my comments to say this. Excuse me, my hands are dirty. I'm painting. But I had to jump on real quick and remind you guys about the criteria that Jesus laid out for false prophets. See, Jesus said that false prophets would come in his name. I'm an atheist. I'm not coming in Jesus' name. He also said that they would proclaim the end is near. I don't believe the end is near. It's probably going to be a very long time before the end. He also said that false prophets would perform miracles and cast out demons. I have never seen a demon in my life, and I wouldn't know how to perform a miracle. So every time you guys come to tell me that I'm the false prophet, it just shows me that you're not reading the book, and you're certainly not reading the words of Jesus.
I don't give a fuck 'cause I'm a millionaire. I do what I want, little finger in the air. Gonna party, party, party like a millionaire. I'ma dance like a star, and I don't even care.
Good morning. I woke up with spoons, bones, and fucks, chose violence, and so now I'm gonna make it everybody else's problem. Here's some beginner research tips for doing your own spell work, which you should be doing. Number 1, Pinterest is for mood boards. Mood boards. Not spell work. If it looks like a meme, it's been pinned for aesthetic purposes by somebody else that also did not do their research. Stop that. If you need herbs for spell work and you don't know what's going to work for you or what you have on hand that'll work, go to pinecone.pub and type in your intention. It'll give you a list of herbs. If you are for some reason unwilling to go down my page and find videos on sigils and make your own, then you can go to Sigil Engine, type in your intention statement in the present tense, and it'll make it for you. For occult research, use any other search engine but Google, because Google weeds it out. If you're doing academic research, then colon.edu for academic sources. You're welcome.
Absolutely, all the time. In fact, quite a few of them do like us. Now, we are all familiar with house elves. They are based off of a real group of fairies, house fae. J.K. Rowling did them dirty. Big time. First off, Dobby itself, it can be used as an insult for fairies that means less intelligent than human. So right off the bat, whew. Second, she made them servants or slaves. They are not. Brownies, bukas, pucks, these different kinds of house fae do live with humans, and they will do chores around the house, but not because they're servants and not because they have to. You see, they adopt us or a location, such as a house, as their own. And they see us as family, and it might as well be blood. Part of the tradition of the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb actually can kind of trace back to this kind of ideology. Sex, gender, gender identity, skin color, race, ethnicity, species does not fucking matter. When you are family, and it might as well be part of blood. Regardless of what you look like, if you have a hand or you have paws. And these fairies will take up residence in households. Sometimes they come with the family, sometimes they come with the house. The house is a little more common, that they've been in the same location for generations. But they will basically help out around the house. They'll do chores here and there as their contribution to the family. Not because they have to. Because if you're lazy and take advantage of them, oh boy, that's a whole basket of eggs that you fucked up. Because they're not servants, they're not slaves. They do not have to help out. They're part of the family. You should treat them as part of the family. But another big thing that's important is to, even though they're part of the family, you don't impose your human standards on them. So you're not supposed to give them clothes. That is an actual thing. Most of them are naked. Giving them clothes has a very different context than what Rowling did. Giving them clothes basically means they need to cover up their shame and hold up to human standards. And basically, it's also dismissing them from the family and saying that, you're just not worth being part of the family. And then you've really hurt their fucking feelings, and now you have a boggart. And yes, now you have a boggart. And you're fucked. Because the thing is, because they're not spirits, they're physical people, they can't be exorcised or banished. Like, there are documents of priests trying. You piss off a fairy, you hurt their feelings like that, they are going to lash out. But in general, these kinds of fairies love us. They think we're funny. In fact, bukas and brownies will even protect their families. So yeah, they can even fucking adore us, but when we impose our human ideology and thinking, especially, I hate to say it, but the colonizer, racist, white people, homogenized mindset is the most destructive thing you can bring to them because, oh God, don't. People be dumb.
Actually, yeah, for sure. I'd be happy to. The thing is that it's not that hard to summarize the actual central plot of Homestuck very quickly. It's just when you actually try to describe how that plot plays out that it gets hard. That's the confusion, I think. Essentially, the premise of Homestuck is that it's a digital age creation myth about 4 kids who play a video game that essentially appears in universes, any universe, when it's ready to die and be regenerated into a new one. So they play this game that ends the world, and then to see the game to its completion would mean creating the next universe and getting to be the god of it. That's the goal, that's the game, that's the plot. If you want to get a little bit more specific, the mechanics of the game that they're playing can affect space and time, the rules of space and time, and because of some of those effects, there are complications that end up echoing back into the session of the game that was played before them that created their universe, our universe, Earth, and they end up in contact with the kids who played the game to create our universe, and that's where the trolls, the aliens, come in. But yeah, I think that still is pretty clear, makes sense. Basically, like, they accidentally, because there's time travel involved in the game, break the previous game from the future, and then have to fix both games in order to create the next universe and win. That's it.
Honest question for you. Please ditch this video and tell me your thoughts.
Essentially nothing. Magic is magic. However, people practicing magic have always utilized syncretism. What is syncretism, you ask? Syncretism is the process of making informed comparisons and combinations of archetypes and practices across a variety of traditions. It's always been part of magic, and I'm going to show that with 3 classic texts. The first is one of the only surviving original texts of pagan magic. Even though it says Greek in the title, it's a combination of practices from a huge variety of traditions. And they're all right next to and intermingled with each other. I think this page, especially with prayers and rituals to Apollo, Zeus, Helios, and the god of the Hebrew Bible. And especially right here, I think is interesting, where there's a direct comparison made between the Egyptian god Osiris and the archangel Michael. People practicing magic tend to be quite promiscuous with all the different divinities they work with, and that hasn't changed in the last 2,500 years. Now let's move to the book that you can trace pretty much the majority of magical practices used today too. Cornelius Agrippa was one of the greatest writers on magic of all time, but he was also a devout Christian. And oh boy, does he get into the magical implications you can find in the Bible. But he still respected and learned from all of the things that paganism could offer as magic. He saw that the archetypes within Christianity and paganism really aren't that far off from each other. We're all in this crazy universe together, and we can learn from each other despite our differences. Now let's move to the work of the Golden Dawn, who is also hugely influential in the modern magic world. They did some seriously crazy stuff. They searched deeply for the core meaning of these traditions and tried to do a sort of alchemy with them. Like Agrippa, they saw fundamental similarities and started to combine those. Paganism, monotheism, it didn't really matter. The quest for divinity is bigger than these kinds of words. When we see past our so-called differences, we can start learning from each other. And when we can do that, we can start creating collectively. And that's when some real magic happens.
The number one question I get asked every Halloween is how to cover those thick, dark brows. Here's how I do it. Mix in an orange or red color corrector to Elmer's glue and apply to the forearm. Then apply a little bit of purple glue stick to the brow. Then very, very slowly peel off the dried glue that you had on your forearm, and voila, you're ready to go. Apply to the glue while it's still tacky. Then with the fullest coverage concealer you have, go ahead and apply over the brow and take a dry sponge and go ahead and press that to build the coverage. You are now ready to set the concealer by packing on a translucent powder. Really make sure you're pressing well. Draw on the brow with your favorite brow pencil. These are all the products you need to get the look. And the best part about using my technique is you can easily peel this right off at the end of the night when you're done with your look. And make sure you subscribe, tag, and share.
Here is the best way to start touring. It's called by 12 promoter theory. It's very simple. What you're gonna do is identify 12 markets around you within a day's drive, okay? And start to play those doing a weekend or every other weekend. So what you'll do is you play the close city on the Friday night, the far city on the Saturday, drive home on a Sunday. If you follow this, you'll play all these markets 4 times a year, so you're not overplaying, but you're building a fan base and you're playing almost 50 shows a year. It's great because when you're bigger and you're ready to do bigger tours, you can use those as launch pads so that you know, okay, we're starting off with 3 good shows, we're ending with 4 good shows, so we can loop out and try something different. Also, as a label guy, I'm way more interested in a band that can draw 100 people in 10 cities than 10 people in 50 cities. Regional touring is important. Focus on building it. Follow for more, DM for private consultation.
This is an old cliche, and sometimes it feels like it's everyone's favorite cliche, but it is just that, a cliche. History isn't written by the winners, history is written by the literate. The losers write histories all the time. Just because we don't always read them doesn't mean they don't exist. Everyone has their own particular version of events. And perhaps the clearest example of the losers writing history is the lost cause myth of the US Civil War, which is not only an example of the losers writing history, but also an example of the losers pushing their history to the forefront of the conversation while attempting to present it as objective fact. The losers write history all the time. It's just the dead who can't do that.
So you guys have been asking this question lately, where do I get my enamel pins and charms made? Well, let's talk about it. I get all of my enamel pins through my manufacturer that I found on Alibaba. It took a little digging to find my right manufacturer, but just asking if they can make it and how much goes a long way. I get all of my charms made from Vogue Race. Their website is very easy to use and I've never had a production problem. Let me know if I can answer anything else for you.
Listen, as your pastor, it's my responsibility that I look out for the enemy's attack on our church. And so, leadership team, how do we stop deconstruction? It's perfectly fine to deconstruct your beliefs as long as you end up with the exact same conclusions that you held before. Maybe we just need to get these deconstructing Christians more involved in church outreaches, like this January in Washington, the Capitol Riots Part 2. I think it's our turn to bring the gallows. They say that they want LGBT inclusion in the church, and I totally get that. LGBT is absolutely included here as a sin option on our new salvation cards. I admit that I'm a sinner, and then you just check the sin that applies to you. Adulterer, murderer, gay, Democrat. We're going to cover all of this in my new sermon series, How to Deconstruct My Way, in my exact parameters and limitations without anything actually changing. It's a bit wordy. Okay, we're going to keep the message the exact same, but change it to How to Deconstruct God's Way. I'm really going to need your help on this because There's not a lot about deconstruction on freesermondownloads.com. What's really important is that we tell these deconstructed Christians that they cannot stop tithing. Pastor Terry, didn't you tell me that you recently spoke to one of these deconstructing Christians? What did they tell you? They told me that lately they've been rethinking their eschatology. Hold up. Look, I'll be honest with you. My entire theological training is basically just 2 Kenneth E. Hagin books and a Jesse Duplantis CD, so you're gonna have to slow down. Esca what now? Just please keep tithing. I saw on Facebook that they have issues with purity culture and how we essentially treat women like slaves to their husbands, but that's ridiculous. We don't treat women like slaves. In fact, this is actually the issue that I allow my wife to talk about. Sweetheart, come here. Here she comes. I bet Stephen Furtick doesn't have to deal with this. You know, I actually met him once. Yeah, I have a selfie with him on Instagram. Yeah, I'm way in the back. What do you say to a deconstructing Christian? You just want an excuse to sin, you were never a real Christian to begin with, and keep tithing. Oh God, they're gonna stop tithing. You're allowed to deconstruct anything you want. There's just a couple of things that you can't deconstruct. Just a couple of things that are off limits. You can't deconstruct any of these. You cannot deconstruct the belief in hell, because let's be honest, fear-based control is really the only reason about 75% of us are still here, okay? So we need that. Can you deconstruct belief in the rapture? No, because if we stop believing that we are about to leave this planet soon, we'd have to actually start taking care of it. And let's be honest, our sanctuary alone uses about as much power as most small cities, so no can do. You absolutely cannot deconstruct Bible literalism. For reasons why, let's turn to page 178 of our holy book. Why can't we deconstruct purity culture? Because without purity culture, we can't train young girls to become wives who submit to their husbands. And without wives' submission, we have no patriarchal structure. And if we don't have patriarchal structure, then soon women will want to have careers other than being an MLM mom. And then who's going to take care of our nursery? Guys, that's it for today. Just remember that next week, we're meeting up again to start brainstorming for the ages 6 and under kids' hell house. So be in prayer.
Truth about Slavic deities is that half of the ones that I hear people talk about on TikTok are actually fake. Most of the information that we have about Slavic deities comes from this paper called Повесть временных лет, or The Tale of Bygone Years, I guess, which was written somewhere around 1100s. In this historical document, there are recorded few Slavic deities. There are general Slavic deities, there's Eastern and Western Slavic deities. Perun, obviously, a real god that we used to have. We've got also Мать Сырая Земля, which is Mother Earth. Veles, again, a real god. However, the amount of stuff that I hear about Veles on TikTok, I don't know where y'all get that from. Most of the times when I try to find out the source, it's some post from Tumblr, some comic or whatever, which, excuse me, I'm not going to take as a reliable source. Then we got Mokosh or Makash, which is one of the few female Slavic deities. Then we got Simargo, which is a flying wolf that nobody exactly is sure what he does. Then we have the god Horse that has nothing to do with horses. We're not exactly sure what his job was. Then we have the god of the sun, Dashbog. And the last one that we have is Tribog. So those are all deities that are mentioned by Vladimir, you know, the guy that Christianized Russia. Real question that I always want to ask people who get into Slavic witchcraft, and the first thing they want to do is find out who the deities are so they can worship them, is why? You get into Slavic spirituality, which, let's be honest, is a little bit anarchist, and you look for a deity to worship. Literally all the deities that are recorded are a representation of some aspect of nature. And the whole spirituality is based on freedom, observation of nature, respect for the animals. Yet you look for some kind of fancy deity to worship? Do you see where I'm going with this? In reality, the majority of spirituality and folklore revolves around spirits, entities that are on the same level as humans. And the interaction with them is based either on friendship or on some kind of negotiation. The idea is that you're on the same level with those spirits. They're not above you. You're supposed to have a healthy respect for them, but not put them above or below or anywhere. They're just there. When somebody's trying to reconnect with Slavic heritage and they ask me for deities to worship, what it sounds like to me is that you're trying to take a Western Christian structure and apply it to Slavic folklore and spirituality. And it's not going to work. You're setting yourself up for failure right from the get-go. I will acknowledge this, that I have nothing against worshiping deities in general. There are different cultures, different philosophies, different spiritualities where deities play a big role. That is beautiful. That is not Slavic spirituality. I will acknowledge my personal bias that I don't worship any deities, especially Slavic deities that are majority male. If anything, I'd be interested in spirituality of Erze people who literally worship trees, which fits with what I believe. My personal philosophy fits with the Slavic folk narrative. And again, my opinion is not the light at the end of the tunnel. I could be totally wrong, but this is my...
Blue hair is weird. I'm going to teach you this how I would teach a child. And I don't know your life story, but for the sake of making this an educational video, I'm going to use stereotypes, so only take what resonates with you. One child is born in a seemingly functional to their awareness loving family, while the other is given quite the opposite. You can't choose that, you're born with it. So you're put out in this world and the majority of your peers are like you, and the majority of your teachers, parents, and authority are like you, and the majority of the media out there is showing people like you. So all of the kids that are not depicted by this media feel erased and different immediately from the time they are born, how they are born. You may feel too feminine as a boy, too masculine as a girl, like you're in the wrong body, like you don't think exactly neurotypically as everyone else, you're too thin, you're too thick, you're too dark, you're not dark enough. Kids like these immediately understand the struggle of not being accepted by the majority, and if it's not the peers doing it, keep in mind they have the same authority and media only depicting the majority of one type of person. So both the outcast and the masses are going to ask the same question of how do I fit into society, and the majority of authority and media is going to be saying things like God is the answer, man marries women, girls are this way, boys this way. You have a set amount of rules that if you have no reason to question, you're not going to disagree with. But when this world has taught you it's not for people like you, you're going to ask, why is it that way? And that brings us to, who is teaching us this? Oh, people born in this era or earlier. Who's making this stuff? People born in this era or earlier. Let me do my research on who taught them that stuff. A common flaw with human beings is that they accept societal norms that are only in place for a little bit over their lifetime because they never lived to see a reason to question it. When you are born in a world that's seemingly against you, you have reason to research why these traditions are in place, and you say, wow, if I happen to be born in the 1900s, pink was for boys and blue is for girls, and cheerleading is for boys and heels are for men, and the Bible was changed to be anti-gay. It's almost like what we are taught is unreliable and not inherently factual. And in the time this was being taught, nobody of the masses was disagreeing. Everyone's born in a box, but we weren't all born with default settings, so we learned that humans can express themselves however they want. The way that you think only natural hair colors is normal, or how you dress is the right way, and blue hair automatically means weird and pronouns equals liberal, that is taught to you. If this existed in the 1900s, this would be awesome, and this would just be English language. When you're wildly accepted by the masses, I see why you wouldn't want to step down. You're the top of the pyramid. But the reason that we dye our hair blue is because the only people who wildly accepted us were other people who weren't afraid of being different. Now listen, maybe you authentically just like being a part of the masses. Maybe your true self likes this stuff. That's fine. But you also have to acknowledge you were taught to avoid anything that would get you bullied or a negative reaction by the masses. So therefore, who's really the top of the pyramid?
No. Because if we're going by your logic, sweetheart, then all of us trans people could then go and say every single cis person we have slept with who is not openly disclosed straightforward to us that they were cisgender, we could say then that we were R-worded too by cis people. All of you cis people are trying to pin us trans people and you cis people against each other, when we're literally just the same. And not to mention, it doesn't matter if a trans person is pre-surgery or post-surgery or doesn't want surgery. It does not matter. They are the gender that they say that they are. So why does anything physical have to matter? When someone is sleeping with me, they're not sleeping with a trans guy named Avery. They're sleeping with Avery. You make absolutely no sense. Like, go read a fucking book.
Have you ever walked past this mysterious door in Bushwick? Well, my name is Lex, and I'm going to take you behind the curtain of the company that brought Versailles to Brooklyn. Welcome to Theater 14, or Company XIV for short. We're a Baroque burlesque theater located right off the Jefferson L in Bushwick. And now you might be wondering, what is Baroque burlesque? XIV founder and creative director Austin McCormick set out to create, and I quote, a beautiful world where classically trained artists could both honor their training and depart from it. The New York Times said that XIV was like the court of Louis XIV was transplanted into a nightclub, and now not only is our name and our shoes derivative of the Sun King, and yes, those are red-bottom, gold-flake custom Laducas, but also our style of entertainment is modeled after the one that he created during his rule. Just like Louis, XIV loves to reimagine fairy tales, myths, and folklore while blending a good mix of dance and fashion, and we've been doing so for more than 14 years, no pun intended. We've done Snow White, Ferdinand the Bull, Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, and we finally got to reopen recently with Nutcracker Rouge, and hope that you'll come visit us if you're in town.
I got published in a way that makes traditional publishers really, really angry. So traditional publishing is when you get an agent, you sell your book to a huge publisher, hopefully, and usually that means selling your rights and getting a percentage of the royalties. Self-publishing is when you basically own almost all of the royalties and publish the book yourself, either on Amazon, Ingram Sparks, and other platforms. I did hybrid publishing. Hybrid publishing is the mix of the two, in which you have the infrastructure of traditional publishing. You have your manuscript editor, your developmental editor, your cover designer, cover artist, copy editor, proofreader, all of that. But then you keep the rights of your book kind of with self-publishing. The catch is with hybrid publishers is that sometimes you have to pay up front. Now, I know this is like the biggest no-no in publishing. You should never get paid to get published, and I agree. The publisher that I use is called New Degree Press, and what was different about their business model was that it was all community funded. People pre-ordered my book even before the book was even out, which one, showed that people were interested in my book, and two, basically fueled everything I needed in terms of marketing, paying for editors, paying for artists, all of that. I know a few indie authors who are making 6 to 7 figures a year, and they get up to 70% royalties. They do not sell their rights, and they're able to, one, market the hell out of their book, and two, get people to actually read it. The reason traditional publishers are pressed about this, especially when it comes to successful indie authors, is because they get no share of that money. Indie authors, when it comes to buying their books, it goes straight to the creator. Indie publishing gives power to the creator, which is the author. We get to market our books and have a better one-on-one relationship with our readers, and also our readers are comfortable knowing that they're not celebrating or supporting a huge corporation that honestly sometimes suffocates BIPOC voices. No, they're directly supporting this BIPOC author. Indie publishing is definitely not for the faint of heart. You have to work your ass off. But I can tell you firsthand, it works. The Boy with Fire hit #1 on Amazon. It's the first ever South Asian book, fantasy book, to hit over 1 million views on TikTok. It was featured on NBC News, with more features coming on different news channels. I am able to connect directly with you and raise voices, BIPOC voices, so more of us can come and celebrate our stories without helping corporations. And yeah, if you have any more questions, just drop them below.
So I just spent the last 2 weeks neck deep in anime made by an actual, literal cult. Here's a highlight. I promise you will not predict this cameo.
I'm Helen Keller.
What?
To make a long story short, back in the 80s, stockbroker Ryuho Okawa, seen here channeling the spirit of Margaret Thatcher, come on! And Obama.
I love my fellow citizens.
Mashed Buddhism, Christianity, and bits of every other faith together with ancient alien conspiracies, gross misinterpretations of Greek and Incan mythology, and the lost continents of Mu and Atlantis to create the Kingdom Hearts of religions, with alien catboy Satan, and he called it Happy Science. Then he started making anime movies out of it, and let me tell you, every time I think I've reached the bottom of that particular rabbit hole, aliens appear out of nowhere and nuke Tokyo. One of the movies is about kids finishing Thomas Edison's spirit phone and visiting 50-foot-tall Einstein in heaven before polka-battling with Adolf Hitler in hell. One recounts the complete history of humanity, starting on Venus, and another one I can't even describe on TikTok. But I have been roasting them over on my YouTube channel, and I just dropped my latest hour-long video essay on the topic, so if you're curious, and I know you are, check that out.
Excuse me, sir. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your coworker. Oh, what would you like to know about Henry? I hadn't said which coworker. Oh, well, who would you like to know about? As a matter of fact, it's Henry. Oh, well, I didn't know him that well. What do you mean, didn't. Oh, I just assumed something horrible had happened to him, like he'd been murdered. Is he all right? No, he's been murdered. Oh, my God. Who could do such a thing to poor Henry? And with a machete? I never said how he was murdered. Oh, how did it happen? With a machete. Oh, my God. Sir, when was the last time you saw Henry? Oh, it must have been Tuesday, the day before it happened. I haven't mentioned when the murder took place. Oh, when did he die? On Wednesday. Oh, my God! Killed on a Wednesday by a machete. Sir, you must find who did this. Surely the killer left some sort of clue, perhaps in their note. So you know about the note. Oh my God, there's a note! Yes, and the killer signed it. Mitch Turner. Your name. But I never told you my name. Oh, what's your name? Mitch Turner. Oh my God!
I've been getting a lot of questions that are like, hey, I made an avatar. How do I actually use that for streaming and VTubing? So I'm going to show you how. So once you've got your avatar ready, you're going to go up to this button in the corner and then press it and then export as VRM. So that's going to take you to this screen, and if you have an accessory that isn't on the head, like I have a tail down here and you want to move that in Unity and you know how to do that, you're going to want to click off Combine Hair Mesh. Otherwise, just like don't touch anything, just hit export. And so then we're just gonna fill in everything that's required and head on down here to export it. So next you're going to need a program to track your face and map it to your avatar with. I use VC Face, I think that's a really good one. I also really like VMagic Mirror, which you can use if you don't have a webcam also. So either of those are really good options. I also have videos that show like all the different ones that I've tried in the past if you want to check those out too. Just find whatever works best for you. So now in OBS, you're going to want to hit the plus under sources and do a game capture. If that doesn't work, you can also try a display capture. But what you're going to want to do is capture a specific window and then find the window for whatever tracking program you use. I use VCFace, so VCFace is going to pop up. And then if your program has a transparent background, which most of them I think do at this point, click Allow Transparency so that the background will become transparent. And yeah, it should show up in OBS or Streamlabs or whatever broadcast software you use. It should work pretty much the same. If your tracking program has like a green screen or chroma key background instead of a transparent one, you're going to want to right click on the source that your avatar is in and then head over to filters and then add a color key source. And then you'll have different options for the background color and you can key it out and mess with the sliders until it looks nice. But yeah, that's basically it. Obviously, you're going to want to customize your scene a little bit and make it pretty before you go live, but that's pretty much the basics of how I set up all of my scenes, so hope this helps.
Because when I was a teenager, my body stopped producing testosterone when I signed up for an app called Tumblr. It didn't really come out till later that reading a horrible amount of Destiel smut would actually block the production of testosterone in a tiny teen boy's body. So now that I'm older, I'm just trying to, catch up on all the years I lost to the war.
In the 5th grade, I was asked to do a report on my favorite founding father. Who'd you pick? I picked Dave Thomas, founder of Wendy's. It's a fascinating tale. You see, Dave Thomas was never born. He was hatched from an egg laid by the great goose of Winchester. That's that big goose that the royal family worships. Well, the Queen of England was so jealous of Dave because he had this beautiful crimson hair that she locked him in a cage and said, "No one will ever see your beautiful hair." So Dave spent his entire childhood locked in this cage until one day a squirrel came to visit. And the squirrel said to Dave, "Hey, Dave, I'm not a squirrel, though I may look it. I'm a sorcerer, here to rescue you, take you to America where you'll find great fame and fortune." Dave says, "Good, that sounds fine." Squirrel said, "Not so fast. In exchange, you must give me your crimson hair." Dave says, "I love my crimson hair." Squirrel says, "Don't worry, I'm just borrowing it. I'll give it back when the time is right. So Dave gives the squirrel his crimson hair. He's let out of the cage and sent on a ship to America. So now Dave, a young man with gray, squirrely hair, is living on the streets of New York City without a dime to his name. And he's thinking, how am I going to make great fame and fortune? I don't know anything. I lived my whole life in a cage. But then he remembered. When he was in the cage, he would always come up with these erotic tales to pass the time. So he starts writing them down and selling them on the streets of New York City. And people are reading this stuff and thinking, oh my God, this is hot. This is some sexy smut. And Dave Thomas becomes the #1 erotic fiction author in all of America. He's so successful that the FBI comes to visit and they say, hey, Dave Thomas, these sexy little stories you're writing are so hot they're turning people into communists. Dave says, I don't think that's how people become communists. They say, well, we don't know. We think it maybe was the movies, and now we think it's erotic fiction, so you better come with us and name names. Dave Thomas says, I can't name names. I don't know anybody. And they grab him and throw him into a van, and they're taking him off somewhere to torture him. And he's thinking, how am I going to get out of this? So he starts telling this story, and it's so hot, so erotic. It's turning on the FBI agents so hard that it does, in fact, turn them into communists. And they let him out. And they say, thanks for the hot tale, comrade, and send him on his way. And then, of course, Dave Thomas takes the money he earned from the erotic fiction, opens up a burger restaurant, names it after his daughter, who had beautiful crimson hair. The squirrel had returned it to him, but not in the way he had thought.
Would you watch these Halloween movies? A schizophrenic woman moves into a haunted house because it's all she can afford. She's a wonderful person, but everyone's so prejudiced against her that she has no money, no friends, and no job. The ghosts try to scare her off, but she thinks she's just hallucinating. Finally, the ghosts decide that the only way to get her to leave their house is to help her turn her life around. A werewolf discovers that he has quite the nose for tracking people down and starts solving crimes every full moon. A frat boy has a one-night stand with a ghost. 9 months later, she shows up and gives him his baby, a half-human, half-monster newborn. The entire fraternity bands together to try to hide and raise a secret monster child. A family pretends to be in the mafia to cover up the fact that they're actually vampires. Two perfect strangers move in together to save on rent. Unbeknownst to them, the house is haunted by a busybody ghost who decides they'd be perfect together and tries to haunt them into falling in love. Put in the comments which of these movies you'd watch and tag an artist or an author who needs a little inspiration.
If you're late diagnosed ADHD, autistic, or otherwise neurodivergent, do you sometimes feel like a fraud or an imposter for saying that you're disabled because you were able to live the majority of your life without accommodation? That's how I feel as the late diagnosed autistic. There are lots of people who would look at a low support needs autistic person and assume that they're not disabled because they can mask, they can verbally communicate, etc. What I'm understanding as I work through my limited beliefs around disabilities is that just because a person can do what's considered regular life things, it doesn't mean that they should be doing it in the same way that non-disabled people do them. Because you have to look at what that action is costing them. Mine cost me my mental health for years, and it was starting to impact my physical health as well. The price I paid to live without accommodation and without a proper understanding of my autistic needs was depression, anxiety, panic attacks, things like panicking at the grocery store or experiencing autistic burnout from masking at work and then needing weeks to recover. That is what it means to be disabled by the environment that you live in.
It's time for lots of mistakes. I make lots of mistakes. So this year's Halloween theme is rainbows and everything turned out great, except for Monsieur Candy Corn. I wanted it to be layered and it looks like someone used all the flavors on a snow cone. Or a unicorn peed on a mountain. The terror! This is your fault. That's how I made them. And this is how you told me to make it. Somebody left a comment saying, hey, you should do your nails when you take pictures of stuff. They are a lot. And I don't know how to pick things up now. Send help. He's stuck in there. I gave this bean too much gravy. Does he just look appropriately squicked out that something's in his eye? I dropped something and it's really bad. Mother, what have you done? So I'm making these little froggies right next to these little pumpkins. I'm slicing them in half so that they can go on the froggies' tummies. And the tray slipped. And this one... I'm not gonna stop you from being who you wanna be, baby. I got an idea. Let me present to you the Queenie of Halloweeny in a bikini. This is how fall makes me feel. I gotta get the pie crust to do the pie thing without the pie tin going...
Physical touch is for the weak, and I'm the strongest one here. You want to know what's radical? Consent-based physical intimacy.
Scene hair tutorial.
We'll go down on the ground, play around till the morning. We'll be drinking, dancing. What I want, take your clothes off, let's get it on because I'm feeling lonely. You know it's true.
Here's what really happens to you on all of the most popular diets right now, from a registered dietitian. First up is the keto diet. It was originally created for epileptic children because it decreases the activity level in your brain. So on this diet, you'll probably experience headaches, brain fog, decreased athletic performance, and increased carbohydrate cravings. Next up is intermittent fasting. This one damages your metabolism, can be really dangerous if you take certain medications, and also has been shown to contribute to binge eating. Plus, it can really interrupt your social schedule. And human connection is actually a large part of health. What if you want to grab breakfast with a friend, but you're not technically supposed to eat until 12 o'clock? That sucks. Last one is Weight Watchers, or how they chose to rebrand as WW Freestyle. This one contributes to disordered eating. It assigns a number value to food, which denotes morality. And if you go over a certain number that you're allotted for the day, you probably feel bad about yourself and like you failed. Dieting can feel really good short term, but it's pretty harmful.
So you want to use a false hydra in your game, but you're not sure how to make your players feel the sensation of their memories being taken from them. When your adventurers get to a town where a false hydra is living, have them encounter an artist. Have that artist offer to draw a portrait of them. Tell them it'll take about a day to finish it, come back tomorrow, it'll cost a silver. Before the session, you are going to draw a picture of your adventuring party. If you're an artist, to go crazy. If you're not an artist, make some stick figures with some identifying features. But you're going to add an extra person to the picture, one none of the players are familiar with. When they come back to get their picture the next day and you present them with the real picture, they will immediately notice there is someone in that picture that they don't recognize. The artist doesn't remember them either. It turns out between the time of the artist finishing the picture and your adventurers coming back to get it, one of their party members was eaten by a false hydra. And now none of them remember this person that they've been traveling with for maybe the whole adventure. This will freak your players out, and it also might help them put together the clues of what a false hydra is.
So you know how spiritual people will often claim that they're not religious and go out of their way to reject what they call a Judeo-Christian ethic or ideology? Well, the vast majority of those people have probably centered their identity around beliefs and practices that emerged from the mysticism of the very cultures they claim to reject. Let's talk about it. So I got this question about Kabbalah specifically. And while I've made videos in the past about Kabbalah and the tarot deck, this time let's talk about the law of attraction. So first off, the term Judeo-Christian. I can't really speak for all Jews on this one, but I get the impression that most Jews see that word as an attempt by the Christian majority, especially in America, to subsume Judaism under Christianity, implying that Judaism is like the beta version of Christianity, which is like the final version that goes to market. So often when I see the word Judeo-Christian in the spiritual marketplace, especially with like the New Age, my assumption is that the person saying it is using Christian attitudes to describe Judaism. Or at the very least assuming that those two religions are linked in ways that actual members of Judaism would not agree with. Now this applies directly to Kabbalah in one sense, because the version that's entered the New Age through like the tarot and Hermeticism and all these other things is explicitly a Christianized one. Hermetic Kabbalah spelled with a Q or Christian Kabbalah spelled with a C take the framework of the Tree of Life and a number of Hebrew transliterations from the parent tradition of Kabbalah, but are not backwards compatible and describe very little about the actual parent tradition after they've filtered down through the various centuries in what we tend to call the Western esoteric tradition. By the time it gets to us, it's been explicitly Christianized and syncretized with all sorts of things like the Egyptomania from the turn of the 20th century and various like pagan reconstructions and astrology, all sorts of shit. And from the turn of the 20th century until now, that's been just like absolutely obliterated and watered down into the context collapse, which is the New Age. So the law of attraction, I've gotten off on a tangent. But the law of attraction is a great example of what this person is asking about. Yes, Wikipedia kind of sucks, but let's use it for convenience. So the law of attraction comes from the New Thought movement, which was popularized at the turn of the 20th century alongside Theosophy. We'll talk about that in a second. The New Thought version of the law of attraction is specifically influenced by Hermeticism. And Hermeticism is organized in part around a highly Christianized version of the Tree of Life from Kabbalah, but which really should not be confused with anything authentically Jewish. Ethics-wise, it's probably safest to say that this is a syncretism, but it's also fair to say that this is appropriated from Judaism and resynthesized into something completely different. So don't expect Jewish folk to recognize this as something that's their own. But back to the LOA. So the word law of attraction first appeared in a book published by Helena Blavatsky. You should recognize her as one of the co-founders of the Theosophical Society at the turn of the 20th century. Theosophy was hugely influenced by this, as was New Thought. And the founding member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, also a member of the Theosophical Society, translated this Kabbalistic classic in 1887, which hugely influenced Theosophy. We didn't get an English translation of this book by an actual rabbi until 1990. So what does that tell you about the law of attraction?
Do you like katsu? Well, if you do, check it out here at Crazy Katsu in Carrollton, Texas. This place just opened up a couple weeks ago. This is their pork katsu, and one thing I noticed is that they do use fresh breadcrumbs that they make in-house, and I do believe it makes a really big difference in how it tastes. It ended up being super crispy, and then I ended up pairing it with the curry and also the udon.
Here are some popular diets and why they suck. This is gonna be fun. Keto was made for epileptic children, and it starts to eat away at the protein in your muscle, including the muscle of your heart. Isn't that fun? Noom says it's not a diet, but it triggers eating disorders and often gives you a calorie range that's only safe for a small child. Intermittent fasting messes with female hormones, blood sugar levels, and it's just a cute way of starving yourself for several hours of your waking day. 79 Hard should be called 79 days of over-exercise. Weight Watchers, or WW, is just a way to make you feel scared of ever having a spoonful of peanut butter or a tablespoon of olive oil ever again. Whole30 is a way to be an annoyingly picky eater for 30 days and then binge on day 31. Dieting sucks! Follow for food freedom.
I have, up to now, taken Dave Chappelle's transphobia in the closer as a given to talk about why I think he did it. Somewhat obvious trigger warning, transphobia. I want this video to be introductory level, so let's start with some terms. Trans people, such as myself, feel that we are a gender different than the one we were assigned at birth. Cisgender people do not. There is a set of laws, actions, and attitudes that negatively impact trans people because we are trans. This can manifest as job discrimination, housing discrimination, legislation to keep us out of public spaces, or a general all-permeating negative attitude that drives cis people to attack us or trans people to depression or suicide. We call all of this together transphobia. The foundation of this system, the root, the core, the beating heart, is the false idea that trans people aren't really the gender we say we are. Validating and reinforcing the foundation of such a violent system means that that system will go on that much longer and hurt that many more trans people. If you watching this believe that, I think you're wrong, and I would like to change your mind, but that's not what this video is for. So, where does Dave Chappelle reinforce that idea? Let's start with the obvious. I'm on Team TERF. TERFs, for the unfamiliar, are a philosophical movement that proudly believes this. He says, gender is real, which is a TERF dog whistle to mean gender is immutable and the same as sex assigned at birth. He says we should be empathetic of TERFs who see trans people as a kind of blackface, which is a very Schrodinger's asshole way of putting it, and reinforces the idea that trans women are men in costume. He misgenders and dead names Caitlyn Jenner and jokes that she won Woman of the Year after only being a woman for a year, saying without saying that her womanhood is different from every bitch in Ohio. He says that everyone in the world was born through the legs of a woman, despite trans men and non-binary people being able to give birth sometimes. He repeatedly misgenders and uses masculine language for his friend who passed away, and maybe she would have thought it was funny, but it will validate the worst tendencies of the audience. This list is not exhaustive, but what I want to end on is that Dave Chappelle knows he's doing it. There's a moment in the special where he stops and breathes and says, "Oh, I'm in trouble now." He's antagonizing the trans community on purpose, and I don't think that makes it better. I think that makes it worse.
Vroid Studio just got a major update. I made this avatar in around 20 minutes using the new stable version of Vroid. And all things considered, it's really not bad. It's definitely more beginner-friendly now. Sometimes it feels more like doing a picro than making a model. And you can finally edit your expressions inside of Vroid without needing to use Unity. I also really like the new clothing presets, but maybe that's just because I hate making clothes. You can still go deeper into the customization beyond the available presets. It looks like all the functionality of the original is still there. It's definitely not perfect, but they added a lot of features that I think were needed. I love how easy it is to use now. Even without knowing how to use the texture or hair editors, you can make a pretty decent avatar. If you're someone who's been wanting to try tubing but don't know where to start or are intimidated by the price or process, then this is for you. Let me know what you guys think about the update.
I go through a lot of instant coffee, primarily making Greek frappe as it's my favorite dessert for the end of the night. The drink is very simple: teaspoon of sugar, bit of water, and instant coffee. No, Greek people, sorry, I'm not using Nescafe. No tradition is worth what Nestle does to children. No. Use a hand frother like this and double or triple the volume in foam. It should hold together pretty well. It kind of comes to the same consistency you would expect from cold foam, which is kind of what it is. Add your ice and some water and your foam is going to float right to the top, creating its own coffee, sweet, cold foam. And that's a take on Greek frappe, my favorite drink.
Oh baby, please let me back in! I'll do anything! I can give you everything you need from a man! Or from a woman! Oh fine! You've given me no choice! Daddy mad!
Books are gay. Like old books, super gay. I'm reading Gilgamesh right now, right? This man had a dream about another guy, and in that dream he was told that he was going to caress him like a man would caress a woman or his wife. And so I was like, okay, it's just symbolism. I chalked it up to that, right? Later in the book, when he meets the dude Enkidu, they start fighting on sight. That's cool. That's whatever. Gilgamesh pins down Enkidu and he says, I'm done. Enkidu says, I'm done. And then they start making out. In the middle of the street, mind you, making out. Then they stand up, hug, hold hands, and walk back to Gilgamesh's castle. That's how the chapter ends. Actually, it ends with them saying, and then they became best friends. Nah, they're a little more than friends, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have a problem with it at all. Like, it's nothing against me or, like, them. It's just, like, they're more than friends. Even later down the line, they're like camping. They don't like go camping. They just have to camp while they're traveling cities, right? They go camping, and Gilgamesh is laying in Enkidu's lap to go to sleep. And at the end of the end of that line, it says, like all men do. You sure about that? You know, because like I swing like a pendulum, so like I'm not like against it or nothing like that. It's more just like I'm a man and I ain't never done that. I ain't. No. Like just call it what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to keep saying they're just friends. They keep reiterating that they're friends. At one point, they call each other intimate friends. Y'all, a lot more than intimate. A lot. They walk and hold hands together, bro. It's like so many times in the book, they say they were walking and holding hands. They were walking and holding hands. Y'all are more than friends. That's like if I drank 5 shots of soju and I was like, I'm sober. Why am I lying to myself? I know what's going on. Why lie? Because, like, it's not that Gilgamesh would be ashamed. Gilgamesh is the same dude who made it a law to where if anytime somebody got married in his city, he had to have sex with the wife first. He got to sleep with the wife first. No joke, he has a whole place. She goes to that place. He does the deed and then calls the husband to come pick her up after he's done. And this is the same dude who won't just say he really likes, like, it's really weird.
Have you ever wanted to start your own cult? In this game, you play as an adorable lamb turned cult leader, and it has big Don't Starve vibes with you growing and building your church. It feels similar to Binding of Isaac in the Dungeons, and it's out next year. What would your cult worship?
Could you imagine Twilight if the entire town of Forks knew that the Cullens were vampires, but before Bella moved there, Charlie told everyone, you are not allowed to tell her about the vampires. So like when Bella almost gets hit by the truck and Edward saves her, everyone in the town knows what actually happened, but they won't tell Bella. And like the entire town knows why the Cullens don't like the Quileutes, but they won't tell Bella. And then when Bella finally pieces together that Edward's a vampire, her friends are like, yeah, actually the entire town is full of supernatural creatures. I don't know, I just think that would be like a really cool idea for like a book, and if someone wrote a book like that, then more people should read a book that had that plot line.
Let's talk about the most notorious book on magic of all time. So a ton of magical practices today stem from this book. There's various information on creating seals and talismans. There's just so much to be learned in here. It's the source by which we get a vast amount of the magical scripts that we use. Kabbalah, geomantic talismans, great insights into mythology, various powers and analysis of astrological magic, just like whatever this is. And it's just got a wealth of information overall. The appendix is also a goldmine as well, and really helps to put the rest of the book in context, as well as expanding upon ideas that Agrippa talks about. And even goes through the logic of some of the processes so that you can go about creating your own. Because if the modern diversity of all the magical practices teaches us anything, it's that classic books like this are just a springboard by which we can evolve magic.
As I previously stated, piracy is a despicable action that should never be done in any way, shape, or form. That being said, I'm here to teach you the commonly used methods of pirates in regards to cartoons and movies. Just a friendly reminder, this is for educational purposes only, and it should not be replicated in any way, shape, or form. That being said, let's get started. There are two main types of way to pirate visual media, such as movies and TV shows. These methods are by streaming and by downloading. I will be focused on streaming for multiple reasons. Downloading can be very dangerous because it infinitely increases the risk of viruses. And also, downloading, especially if you're doing it the old ways of piracy, require a lot of torrents. In today's day and age, torrents can be very dangerous and they're pretty unnecessary. On the other hand, streaming is extremely easy. Extremely easy. Typically, all pirates do is go to a streaming website and just stream their movie. It's horrendously easy. So here's a list of terrible illegal sites that pirates will use. Again, educational purposes, do not replicate. Let's start with the basics. 1, 2, 3 movies, Kiss Anime, and Kiss Cartoon are pretty reliable. But the worst of all, and I think the one that you should avoid the most, is MyFlixer. According to multiple sites from pirates, not me, MyFlixer has never not had a show or movie that they were looking for. If pirates want Star Wars, boom, there is all of the Star Wars. If pirates want to watch Dune, then bam, Dune 2021, and bam, Dune 1984. And remember, pirates are very careful in visiting suspicious websites. They do not click on anything they do not know for sure is safe. Also remember that pirating things from indie or small developers is very looked down upon in that community. Again, this is for educational purposes only. Do not replicate anything that was in this video.
I had a most interesting conversation with myself. I couldn't be sure if it was a dream, or a memory, or the memory of a dream, or the dream of a memory.
We look good for our age. No, we don't. So did we ever wind up writing movies and novels and living in Paris? No. Why, is that what we wanted to do with our lives? Since we were 14, yeah. I don't think that is what we wanted to do with ourselves. It is. No. Yes? No. Yes. Well then perhaps we wanted it, but we didn't really want it. I still want to do those things, which means you wanted to do those things. As I remember, kids came along and then we had to get a real job. I never wanted kids, remember? You'll change your mind. I don't want to change my mind. Remember the motto? Kids kill the dream. Trust me, you'll get over all this. I don't want to get over all this. Give it time, mate. You don't remember being me, do you? You were a very long time ago.
It must be very strange to look back on the remnants of who you were. He seemed to me like a villain, but perhaps you can never stay the hero, even of your own story.
Hi, I wrote a tabletop RPG based on Noodle the Pug. It's called Oracle of Bones. It's a single-player game that only needs 2 dice to play. You play as someone with a burning question, and you decide to seek knowledge from the greatest oracle of our time, Noodle the Pug. At the beginning of each day of your journey, you roll on the event table, which determines what you run into that day. For example, you might roll wildlife or an abandoned building. Then you roll to see whether it is a bones day or a no bones day. The type of day determines what the event will be like. For example, if you roll wildlife on a bones day, you might say you gained an animal companion who will join you on your journey. But if you rolled it on a no bones day, you might say that you got pranked by a bunch of squirrels. At the end of each day, you make a journal entry about what happened. Some people might call this more of a writing exercise than a game, and honestly, whatever you want to call it is valid. You can get the game for free at this link. Also, the awesome art was done by my friend Victor, whose Twitter can be found here.
show you guys how to win the claw machine every single time. All you have to do is come to the joystick and spin it for a couple seconds, and then go up, 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 down, 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 left, right, up, down, and then press the yellow button 3 times. And then once you put that code in, the machine is now going into maintenance mode. So as soon as you put your money in, this is only for the workers to test the machine to make sure it's working properly. So now line up your prize, and then before you drop it, you have to hold the button the entire time. So I'm going to hold the button the entire time, and it works every single time. Watch this, guys. Look at that. Every single time. I just won it again.
This is your next out-of-the-box date idea. If you feel yourself getting into the same routines with your partner, like you always watch the same show, always cook the same things, always go out to the same restaurants, and you want to like spice it up a little bit, I present to you blindfolded baking. It looks like a shit show, I know, but it's actually really fun. And this is my 5 a.m. series where I do something different every morning for my mental health. So I did this bad boy by myself, but it's really fun with a partner. So basically one person is blindfolded and the other one like walks them through what they need to do. And it's just fun because it like forces you guys to bond and communicate, and like something bad will happen inevitably, so just like pee yourself laughing. It's just like a really fun special date night.
So I've recently been rereading Animorphs, and I think I may have discovered the most tragic character ever created in children's media, aka Bird Boy Tobias. For those of you that had normal, healthy taste in children's books growing up, the Animorphs follows a team of 5 children that are given the ability to morph into any living creature whose DNA they can acquire in order to combat an alien invasion. Dogs, cats, ponies, other people, as long as they can touch it, they can morph into it. But the caveat is they can't remain in the morph for more than 2 hours, and if they do, they'll get stuck. And poor Tobias manages to get stuck as a red-tailed hawk 3 books into what is a 50+ book series. But let's recap his life. Even pre-transformation, Tobias doesn't have a happy life, being continuously shuttled back and forth between an uncle that emotionally abuses him and an aunt that treats him as her personal house servant. And when he gets stuck, they never search for him or ask of him ever again. Tobias, in the meanwhile, is attempting to cling to whatever small, tattered shred of humanity he has left, but is overwhelmed by his hawk's instincts and winds up killing and eating a rat, which then triggers a mental breakdown in which he flies into a mall and repeatedly attempts to slam himself into glass windows, doors, and skylights, which is then followed by him fleeing into a meadow and very almost losing all his human memories. When he finally comes to, he just has to cope with the fact that he, a 13-year-old boy, has lost his previous humanity permanently. Kind of heavy. To make bad matters worse, when he finally regains his morphing powers, he discovers his humanity isn't restored with them. A hawk brain and body are now his default. The only way to regain his humanity is to surrender his morphing ability, which he can't due to the obligation he feels to fight for Earth and its people. And he endures war crime after war crime, including horrific torture that permanently alters his personality in the books. And he's continuously handling all this pain just to wind up having the love of his life being brutally murdered during the final battle and the majority of his friendships destroyed. And in his grief, Tobias forsakes mankind and retreats into the woods, presumably to live out the rest of his life and die as a red-tailed hawk. K.A. Applegate just decided to make his life horrific misery from beginning to end and committed. Excellent metaphor for how enduring horror can permanently contort and dilute one's sense of self to the point that it is unrecognizable, but God, that was intense.
In the fall, I only want to eat things that make me feel like I live in a cottage, and stuffed apples are the top tier cottage food, I believe. I don't know. First, you get some apples. A squirrel crawls all over mine, and I still don't wash them, but I probably should. Then you cut the tops off of those, and you just carve little bowls out of them. You can either use a knife or like a melon ball or whatever you feel, and just leave like the bottom, just make a little bowl. Then I cut up a 1/4 cup of pecans. I don't know how to say that. And add a 1/4 cup of rolled oats, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a little pinch of salt, a little pinch of nutmeg. The nutmeg makes a difference. Then I add a couple spoonfuls of coconut oil. You can use butter. And then for sweetener, I use a mixture of both maple syrup and just drizzle on some honey. It doesn't have to be a lot of sweetener. It'll be sweet either way. You mix it up, and you can add a bit more dry ingredients if you want to. Then you stuff your little apple bowls, and you're going to cook them in the oven at 350 for 30 minutes or until they're like a little crunchy, but they're very aromatic, you know? They're amazing. They taste so good.
How to make the Fat Man. First, Dr. Pepper. Coke. Cinnamon syrup. Caramel syrup. And drop the bomb. Only in the wasteland.